Die Eröffnungsfeier des Handschuh-Universums. Bist du bereit, Patrick?
Na und wie?
Also dann raus aus dem Ketten, gib mir den Schlüssel.
Welchen denn?
Den Schlüssel für die Ketten, ich hab ihn dir doch gegeben.
Ach so, den, ja. Du hast mir gesagt, dass ich ihn an einen sicheren Platz legen soll.
Und wo ist dieser Platz?
Er liegt sicher und
Oh,
geborgen.
wow, was der da?
Wo ihn niemals jemand finden wird. Was du hast?
Oh.
Chef, ich gebe hier wirklich mein Bestes. Dieser hier ist doch so neu für mich. Bitte nicht das Gehirn rausnehmen.
Immer locker bleiben.
Oh, was denn da?
Verständnis zu mir sofort einen Krabbenburger raus und los.
Wow.
Was?
Trink einen Schluck.
Warte! Ich befehle dir, mir einen Krabbenburger zu machen.
Jetzt nicht, aber nicht.
Wow.
Ja, altes Haus. Sieht aus, als wäre es das für uns beide gewesen.
Ich ertrage das nicht mehr. Du musst diesen grässlichen gelben Albtraum zurücknehmen. Es bringt einfach nichts. Wenn ich dir offen und ehrlich die Krabbenburger-Formel stehle, bin ich besser dran.
Ich finde, ein Geschäft ist ein Geschäft, Plankton. Jetzt kannst du...
Oh.
Oh, bitte, hab Mitleid, Krabs. Ich tue auch alles. Ich flehe dich an.
Sagen wir, du gibst mir $50, dann nehme ich ihn wieder zurück.
Einverstanden. Ich hab sowieso geschummelt.
Mach bloß eine Fliege, du halbe Portion.
Dankeschön.
Mein Gehirn und ich freuen uns, wieder da zu sein.
Schön, dass du wieder da bist, Junge.
Wow.
Jetzt geh an die Buletten, gleich geht wieder der große Ansturm los.
Ich hab irgendwie keine Lust. Frag mich noch mal in einer Stunde, Krabby. Ich meine, ich arbeite hier heute umsonst mit Vergnügen.
Ich dachte schon, ich habe mich gerade verhört.
Sag mal, was machst du denn da? Da ist ein loser Faden. Und? Ich will nur mal an ihm ziehen.
Wenn ich dich ziehen lasse, lässt du mich dann bitte in Ruhe mein Buch weiterlesen?
Oh.
Gut, bring es hinter uns.
Wow.
Setzen Sie sich, mein Herr, ich komme gleich zu Ihnen.
Mein wertvollster Besitz. Abgesehen von dir natürlich mein Liebling.
Wow.
Was?
Meine Wertschätzung verliert an
Mein Geld zurück. Was gibt es für ein Problem? Da ist ein langes Haar in meiner Suppe und ich verlange mein Geld zurück. Also das ist nicht irgendein Haar, sondern von der seltenen peruvianischen Seelope für das Aroma. Und es kostet nur zusätzlich $100 Millionen. Das scheint mir etwas exorbitant zu sein. Aber was sind schon magere 100 Millionen für jemanden? Ach, schon gut. So groß war mein Hunger nun auch wieder nicht. Hat jemand ein rostiges Taxi gerufen?
Ich liebe Pferde.
Na, herzlichen Glückwunsch.
Wow, 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 wow.
Sind Sie das? Oh,
Das ist eher Clarence Version von
hey, Sie sehen gut aus, Mr. Krabs. Ich hasse alles.
So sieht Karen Tadeo aus.
Das kriegen wir mit Make-up wieder hin.
Wow.
Ich frag mich, ob Karen auch eine Version von mir hat. Deng, deng. Deng, deng. Oh, der Kerl ist ja ein Feger.
Eindringling in Sektion B. Eliminiert.
Wow.
Out of vehicular assault,
I have a bulldozer.
causing the game to reach 7 million visits, which at the time converted to 700,000 Robux. A nice motivation to keep things going. By doing something that works and something you love, you're destined to succeed as long as you keep going at it. But as time went on, he noticed that other games beat him in competition. But being the dedicated dev he was, he used his money to grind out a new game. But unlike all the other games, this one had way more potential. It was way ahead of its time. But to fully understand how, let's compare it to a modern game, Star Rail Simulator, the sponsor of this video. Similarly to Ripple, the owner was inspired by Honkai Star Rail, a popular RPG. He turned it into a Roblox game where your goal is to defeat monsters to get credits for stronger abilities. And as for Ripple, he was inspired by every Roblox game, so we combined them all into one big idea which no one has ever thought of. Ripple minigames. How this game works is you and your friends are selected to play a random minigame with its own special game mode and vibe. Likewise, Star Rail Simulator is split into two main areas, each with their own vibe. Beating them gives you rewards. Proceed to the next world. It's a clever parody of the actual game, so right off the bat, fans of Honkai flocked to the game's release. But as for Ripple, with over 30 minigames, it's not a surprise that the game quickly did numbers. The games were all simple, so people outside of Roblox noticed it, and especially Roblox himself, which you'll see why it's important. But back to our modern game. Unlike most simulators, the game has an event every 10 minutes, spawning a server boss that everyone has to defeat with the help of Sparkle, Pom-Pom, Black Swan, March 7th, and Blade. Special fighters that came from and can be used in the original Honkai. Anyways, beating the boss gives you Stellar Jades, a special currency to get even more OP abilities. And as for Honkai itself, you can use my code to get 50 Stellar Jades. So now it's a good time to check out the game's events. Oh, and speaking of events, every year Roblox hosts a special event, Egg Hunt, which everyone loved. To do this, he chose his favorite games to hide them, one of them being Ripple minigames. Immediately, players flocked to the game to find the eggs, but while doing so, got obsessed with the various different minigames it had to offer. Overnight, the game was hitting record numbers. Roblox himself was happy, with the game bringing life to the platform.
Endlich herrscht hier ein wenig Stil. So kann ich mich an die Arbeit gewöhnen.
Wow! Wow! Oh! Wow, wow,
Aber wir sind unter Wasser. Bleiben Sie doch hier. So ein bisschen Wind ist doch nicht schlimm, oder? Die Kundschaft fliegt, tu doch was.
Ei, ei, Chef.
wow, hello, wow, oh.
Das hast du wunderbar gemacht, Minion. Ja, ist ja sicher ganz nett, aber jetzt bin ich da draußen. Das finde ich so ein bisschen öde.
Wow, 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 wow,
Keiner,
wow.
wenn wir erst alle
Wow.
Mini games. Immediately, players flocked to the game to find the eggs. But while doing so, got obsessed with the various different mini games it had to offer. Overnight, the game was hitting record numbers. Ripple was thriving, players were playing, and even Roblox himself was happy. With the game bringing life to the platform, this seems like the start of an incredible journey. But during all the success, one player in particular was heavily inspired and thought,
Surely I can make my own version of this.
just like how Ripple was inspired by Destruction Derby,
Wow.
Typical was inspired by Ripple minigames. It's a beautiful cycle, so a few weeks later, he made Epic Minigames. A near perfect replica of Ripple's, except with better maps, better game modes, and better marketing.
Wow.
Now that I say it, it seems kind of threatening to Ripple's game. But let's not be negative. I'm sure they'll totally coexist in harmony. Despite their competition, both games grew at the exact same speed. Except, Epic Minigames was more frequent with updates. Every week, they added more creative minigames, which even the Roblox staff really loved.
These devs seem dedicated. We should include them in our official events.
So in June of that year, Epic Minigames had its first event, where players get a special item from playing the minigames. This was a genius move, because Roblox back then was getting tons and tons of new players, and the minigames themselves were easy to understand. This did wonders for Epic Minigames, so a few months later, Roblox included them in another event. And another... Wait, I feel like we're missing something. Isn't this video supposed to be about... Oh. After all the support, Epic Minigames assembled a way bigger team, leaving Ripple in the dust. So he passed his crown and quietly moved on. But he was far from done. Just like his first success, he took inspiration from another one of his favorite games, Rust, a multiplayer survival game. The idea was pretty simple, so with a small team, they made a whole new group called Rovive, spent a year passionately working on the map and weapons, with the hopes of this game finally getting... Aw, come on. You may be wondering how a guy Roblox loves got banned. Well, this began when a fan made their own group inspired by him. But the group in question made a game completely ripping off Pokemon. Roblox thought it was Ripple's group and punished him instead. Attempt after attempt, Ripple angrily tried to get his stuff back, but to no avail. After days of pestering, he got his account back, but he saw the platform in a different light. Ever since, he was getting less and less active with his game, until he completely disappeared. If you go to his main game, it's still up, but his profile is completely banished. Perhaps Roblox banned him again, but if you go to his Twitter, he says he's permanently retired. People claimed this was because he allegedly scammed his team for Rovive, which could explain a lot. With all this spreading around and his throne being taken, it's honestly kinda sad. But a clue he left behind caught me off guard. According to a website that saves data, Ripple states he's no longer enjoying Roblox and only wants money. So these issues really killed his passion, causing him to focus more on life. But either way, after pioneering a new type of game, helping with huge events, and bringing life to the platform, he's definitely made his mark. So let's hope he inspired the new generation to do the same. Well, we're in luck, because our next player might do just that. Just like Ripple, he's driven, dedicated, and determined to make Roblox games. Cause years before, he's been a fan of them, but none of them truly stood out. So, he wanted to be as different as possible with his games. To make myself and Decabox more clear, let's investigate his earliest game. The game was simple. You can morph into a baby, teen, adult, then do whatever your heart tells you to. What can possibly go wrong? On the surface, this seems like another plain, boring roleplay game.
But didn't you just say he's different?
Quiet. Cause here's where the twist comes in. Unlike most of these steps, Decabox was brave enough to give another player, Albert, admin, who just so happens to be the biggest Roblox YouTuber. With this special power, Albert used it to do some pretty nice things.
I just want to break the server for them because I don't think they should be playing right now.
Okay, maybe not so nice. But with the game's nonchalant nature and Albert's excessive trolling, players were on the edge of their seats. He also added a game pass for admin commands. And as Decabox expected, his viewers crowded the game. Quickly, his basic roleplay game became a haven for experiments, like griefing, spying, and abusing.
Die, dude!
But it's all in good fun, and it brought life to Decabox's hard work, and especially his other roleplay games. Despite the money he made, that didn't matter at all to him. What actually mattered was people having fun in the games he made, and he was especially thankful for Albert helping him out. But every action always has an equal force against it. Okay, in simple terms, the more players the game had, the more it got pushed on Roblox. Since the game was a roleplay game, a lot of online daters found it and used it for questionable activities, which made it impossible for normal players to have fun. Oh, and not to mention, this happened in every one of his roleplay games. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Everyone thought Decabox was responsible for this. In retaliation, trolls infested his game with bots and framed Decabox for doing it. And just like with Ripple, Roblox believed he actually did it and banned his account, which locked this group that had all his games. Reasonably, he was upset, very upset in fact, not because his group had 3 million Robux, but because he worked so hard to build it and no amount of money can get it back. But after getting support from his fans and the biggest YouTubers, he was determined to pick up where he left. So right away, he made a new account named Decapad. Thankfully, he saved some games in an RBX file and was able to re-upload them. But players still found it and reported him. Although he was mad at this, it didn't stop him from making new accounts.
What if we try this one more time but have the games and group under a different name?
That's actually brilliant. No way the mods will detect it. No. Surely, there must be more to this than online daters. Players must have found worse reasons to report him. Cause the ban reason says he sold Robux for real money. A massive violation of the rules. But according to Decabox, all he did was trade his friend expensive items. But Roblox thought he sold it for real money.
Would he be selling the limited if he ends up getting them back? I don't think so.
Even after proving his case, the admin still did nothing.
Unban Decabox!
He didn't do anything.
He doesn't deserve this.
Ban after ban, he lost more and more hope. Until... you get the picture. But instead of dwelling on the negative, We should all be happy with what he tried to do. In the short span of a year, he kickstarted the biggest Roblox series for millions to enjoy, paved the way for current roleplay games, and made a living off of Roblox, and especially for others, enough to enjoy his retirement and live his life to the fullest. So we shouldn't let trolls take that thought away. Although we don't know where now, I think it's best to respect his privacy and honor him as a person, and let him move on to a new chapter of his life. But doesn't that make you realize these free players had a lot going for them, but because of that, players mistreated them without giving them a chance to speak for themselves, driving them off the platform. No matter how rich, famous, or beloved someone is, there's always a person behind that screen with real emotions. Which is why for my next video, I'll be interviewing the richest Roblox players, not just to find their secrets, but to understand and relate to them as human beings like you and me. So if you don't want to miss it, please check if you're subscribed. I guarantee it'll be worth it. But for now, that's Imagine owning the largest Roblox game, ranking millions of dollars and billions of visitors, only to lose it all. Sadly, this happens to many beloved games, and for reasons you might not expect. So, to find out why this happens and how to prevent it, we need to dive into the stories of fallen Roblox games. Beginning with Meep City. Wow, that looks different. What started as a passion project by the player Alex Neutron quickly became a rising Roblox game. But wait a minute, you may be wondering how a game this plain blew up in 2016, a time when games like this were on the rise. Alright, let's throw our preconceived notions out the window and actually analyze the game. Despite having a basic design, the game had infinite things to do. You can chat, work humble jobs, and start a family. With zero rules, players were fully in control, which hopefully won't backfire. But even with all this, Alex wanted to give players something to grind for. Money. So he added mini-games to keep players playing, like puzzles, races, fishing, you name it. Overall, the game was a nice way to have a break from your troubles.
Look how amazing that looks. Oh my goodness.
Meep City is officially a year old. Most of Alex's games would die by then. But Meep City's endless gameplay made it stand out. But to prevent players from losing interest, the devs added one important feature: parties. This allowed you to invite your friends to your house and have a fun time with them. A totally innocent feature that definitely won't be—
Bro, what are you yapping about?
Yeah, it's probably nothing. After 2 years time with them, a totally innocent feature that definitely won't be—
Oh, what are you yapping about?
Yeah, it's probably nothing. After 2 years of consistent updates, Alex broke the limit of how big a Roblox game can get. The updates themselves weren't the craziest, but the main thing carrying the game was parties. Since players can host their own games, Meep City became more player-driven and infinite, which made it the first game to reach 1 billion visits. And of course, his fans were proud.
The online data overlord.
Wait,
Are you
what?
sure incredible?
Lol promoting online data.
Humanity is doomed. Ban Meep City.
Oh my god, no please! What the f—
Are we looking at the same thing here? Time for an investigation. Surely a game this innocent couldn't possibly get this much hate. But aren't parties the reason why the game is so popular? Why did I open that? Yes, parties were crucial for the game's success, but at the same time, made the game very unsafe for children, because the parties had questionable items that enabled this kind of behavior. I mean, what do you expect when a game has zero rules and is completely controlled by players? Despite this red flag, Alex continued to grow his game with the issues in the back of his mind, but at what cost? As the numbers rose, so did the dangers. I really hope something is done about this, otherwise who knows what'll happen. Due to the insane backlash, exploiters had a motivation to attack the game, which made it more unsafe for children. At this point, Alex had two options. He can either remove parties to save his reputation, or maximize his growth by harming more children. Although he can't control what players do, his ignorance of the game's rules and features certainly played a part, leading to one final blow. With his biggest game that he spent years on dead, Alex was confined to one last option. Although it wasn't ideal for performance, it was the right thing to do. Surprisingly, Alex got his game back, but with some consequences. Without parties, the game was 90% less popular, but I guess it was worth it for the safety of players. But even with this change, the game still has these kinds of people. I guess the damage was already done. Now that was a pretty big game, but what about a game 10 times its size that also went up in smoke? How is that even possible? To truly understand how, we need to find what makes old games never die. But to do this, we need some help from our sponsor, War Thunder, which also never died out. It's a free-to-play epic military action game with ground, air, and naval combat, ranging from the 20th century all the way to now. With a large-scale multiplayer map, players can play and fight however they want, which kinda reminds me of our first Immortal game. Although not as intense as War Thunder, it's a large-scale multiplayer game with many different jobs as pizza makers. With so much to do and many different ways to make pizzas, players can play however they want, while being appropriate. And even 11 years later, the devs still make efforts to update War Thunder, like the new Air Superiority update, containing better vehicles like the T-90M, Gripen, and F-15 Eagle, and not to mention a new location for air battles, which makes the game all the more chaotic, just like NDS. The game forces you to survive random disasters in random maps. As simple as this seems, it makes so much room for random chaos. Even to this day, funny memes are still being made about it. With various locations and a huge player base, you're constantly on edge in battle. You'll never know when you'll get blasted by a guided missile, drone, or a nuclear bomb, similar to our last Immortal game. In Murder Mystery 2, one person gets chosen as the murderer, but has to hide it. You never know who the murderer is or when they'll strike. It's a game of bluffery and you're always on edge, which makes it more exciting the more you play it. And just like Roblox, it's free on all devices. So download War Thunder right now with the link below. And if you're new or haven't played for at least 6 months, not only will you get free vehicles for a week, free skins with them, 100k silver lines, free premium vehicles, and a week of premium. But I'll also give someone 10,000 Robux. You don't want to miss it. Anyways, with all this in mind, it's time to move on to Phase 3. Wow, 3 times did this massive game get abandoned. 3 times, even Meep City still updates. Our story begins when 17-year-old Preston had a goal. A goal to make as much money as possible from Roblox games. So he spent months on a new game, Pet Sim. The aim was to collect money with your pets and use that money to get even better pets and zones to earn more money. The game immediately took off thanks to how colorful and grindy it was. Players spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of days grinding for the best pets.
Oh man, that's a lot, wow.
But as time went by, Preston got tired of making the same updates over and over again. So, to fix this...
I'm gonna kill my game to make a sequel.
You're joking, right?
Surely it has to do good.
You may be wondering how a sequel to a massive Roblox game failed. I mean, the game is also colorful and grindy, so how could this even happen? Well, compared to the previous game, Pet Sim 2 barely had any zones to grind for. This caused players to not only get bored, but also mad, cause by paying Robux, you can access the next update, which was kinda unfair. But the biggest problem was broken promises. After months of hype, Preston abandoned the game after 4 updates, mainly because of how hard it was to make something this perfect. You can't make promises you can't deliver on. With the fall of Pet Sim 1 and 2, it's time for Preston to retire the Pet Sim brand. Despite finding instant success, Preston made a few blunders, causing Pet Sim to vanish. So at this stage, most devs would throw in the towel and peacefully retire.
So, what was that about me retiring?
Rather than fully killing the franchise, Preston adapted and learned from his mistakes. For many months, he carefully crafted a new game, Pet Sim X, a combination of Pet Sim 1 and 2, but with way more zones and pets during release. And unlike last time, Preston had all the ideas ready to go. But to actually turn them into updates, the team had an interesting strategy. Rather than stressing on making each world perfect, they made each zone smaller, which allowed them to make more of them in total. When it comes to Roblox games, players don't expect perfection. They just want to have plain fun. Following the successful release, every week he added better and better pets, each getting more difficult to grind for. Oh, and not to mention the occasional Easter eggs, which always got players talking.
Cheers to the start of an incredible journey.
But in the midst of all this, there's still one question that hasn't been answered. Instead of wasting time on a whole new game, why not simply change the old one? Well,
What the fuck? No. What did you do?
By making a new game, he had a reason to build more hype, which means more money. I mean, it makes sense, considering these new game passes make it very unfair for poor players. So now the question is, what happens when a money-hungry owner has a growing Roblox game?
Introducing Pet Sim X NFTs.
Time to get the game deleted, I guess.
Big reason beats the game soared thousands of dollars from kids. Out of rage, they did some digging and learned about Preston's history of games.
Why should I spend my time and money on a game that'll likely be abandoned?
Sure, games like Blox Fruits and Murder Mystery have gone months without updates, and players still love them. But that's because those games have no end goal, making them last forever. But in Pet Sim, once you grind all the way to the final zone, what's there left to do? But surely, none of this matters as long as he keeps updates coming. right? Ignoring all the drama, he continued to add stronger pets and better worlds. Who could have guessed? But most importantly, a 10,000 Robux game pass, allowing you to equip infinite pets instead of the usual 8. Which may seem good, but the problem is, the ability expires in 72 hours. Nice one, Preston. But after this, things took a sharp left turn. The game completely slowed down on updates. This was a massive problem considering how repetitive and formulaic the gameplay was. Without new worlds, most players had time to reach the final zone and completely stop playing. Following a sharp decline in players, Preston returned with a few interesting updates here and there, but this was only short-lived. Which begs the question, at the height of it all, why is he now abandoning his game? Well, for one, the more money he makes, the Rip Indra grew the largest Roblox game by helping players, putting his heart into updates, and making the most insane experience for content creators, regardless of how big his game gets. But on the flip side, Preston makes a cash grab update once a month and dips. Instead of making the best experience for others, he's focused on making the best money for himself. So it's much harder to be truly passionate, causing him to give up after some time. And even doing selfish things, like striking games inspired by him. But what if I told you, those aren't even the biggest reasons for the game's decline. You see, Preston's initial idea was good, but it's basically the same process a billion trillion times. Once your brain finds a pattern in something, you're inevitably gonna be less interested. The main idea sets an expectation for successful simulators, never-ending cycle of the same mundane task. But since Preston started this whole trend, it's time for him to end it. And if you don't know what I mean, welcome to Pet Sim 99. Unlike his last free games, almost every world has a custom mini-game that gives you something to do. And although the game does have gambling, the devs made up for it in an interesting way. Instead of spending thousands of Robux on game passes, you can trade pets for diamonds, which you can then use for special power-ups, like equipping more pets and more pet damage. Plus, once you're at the final zone, you still have all of these extra side quests, which players actually turned into a fun competition. With more community bond, Preston was motivated to pour his heart to learn and adapt. But if we completely neglected the well-being and safety of players, at the end of the day, all of these competition. With more community bonds, Preston was motivated to pour his heart to make them spectacular. So, despite his history, we should all give him another chance to make something great, as long as he continues to learn and adapt. But if we look at the big picture, the fall of these different Roblox games have one thing in common. Since both devs were so focused on money and growth, they completely neglected the well-being and safety of players. At the end of the day, it's cool to get rich, but it's even cooler to do that by putting love, time, and care into your work and community. And speaking of that, I truly love making these kinds of videos, so if you want to see more, let's get 50k likes, and hit subscribe while you're at it. But for now, that's a wrap.